With the rise of cinematic universes, shout out Marvel and DC, I've always questioned whether or not the potential was there for good video game cinematic universes. It's genuinely easy for us to dismiss that idea when we've had so many missed opportunities in the past. It's also hard to not laugh at this idea when you look at the awful movies in the past like the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which I'll never forget because of how god-awful it is. However, when you look at the newest two video game movies, it's hard to not have a small sense of hope. It's because of Detective Pikachu and Sonic the Hedgehog that I feel as if we can actually have a legitimate video game shared movie universe. No, I'm not saying that we need to build up to a Super Smash Bros. Movie, because if I'm being honest, I don't think that would do well as an Avengers-esque movie. But what I'm saying is, I genuinely believe with the right creative direction, certain video game IPs can be made into legitimately good movies, let alone shows. As always, I'm your host, Justin, otherwise known as IDontBeatGames, and I'm here to bring that nerd culture content right to your monitors. Video games, especially PlayStation games, have done a phenomenal job at telling stories. It's not like people don't joke around that PlayStation games are movies. When you look at games such as Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, The Last of Us, Uncharted, and more, you can tell that PlayStation knows what they're doing when it comes to telling stories that people legitimately care about. Also, this is no shade to Nintendo or Xbox, don't worry, we'll be diving into those two later on. However, the problem with video games is that for as long as we all can remember, video games have been made into movies and have ultimately always ended up doing poorly. There's only 3 movies that have succeeded and gotten it done in movie theaters. The Angry Birds movie, Detective Pikachu, and Sonic the Hedgehog have basically been anomalies when it comes to this topic of discussion. Just by taking a look at the Rotten Tomatoes list titled 43 video game movies ranked worst to best, it's hard to not sigh because man, these movies were absolutely awful. To name a few, we have Mortal Kombat Annihilation, which has a 2% on Rotten Tomatoes, Street Fighter The Legend of Chun-Li, which has a 5% on Rotten Tomatoes, Street Fighter, which has a 10% on Rotten Tomatoes, Assassin's Creed, which has a 16% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the list keeps on going. No, really, there's almost no good video game movies on this list at all, outside of the Angry Birds movie, Detective Pikachu, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Tomb Raider, which is the weakest one out of these good movies. Also, it doesn't help that the 6th best video game movie ranked on this list is actually the original Mortal Kombat movie. Can somebody make it make sense? Because last time I watched this movie, I remember that movie being absolutely awful. Okay, so the core reason I'm bringing up these past mistakes is because it's clear. Hollywood might have finally learned their lesson when it comes to video game movies. For conversation's sake, let's talk about Sonic the Hedgehog and Detective Pikachu, because those movies give me actual hope for the future. Plus, they're rated higher than Tomb Raider, which I haven't seen, and I thought it was on Netflix, but it's not, so don't hate me too much. The Sonic movie was the last movie I've seen in theaters. Yeah, I know, it's been a long year, I feel you on that one. Sonic's movie does a good job at bringing this character to life in a universe that could have resulted into a much worse movie. Sonic's personality within this movie is basically that he's a ball of energy, and honestly, that's exactly what he is, right? Everyone knows that Sonic's a hedgehog with super speed that could probably teach Barry Allen a thing or two. However, the way Sonic grows in this movie, going from this lost space alien on Earth to forming a bond with our favorite human, Donut Lord, he legitimately learns things at a quick pace. Pun intended. And honestly, it helps that they kind of just let Robotnik be this crazy scientist that has a couple of funny moments every now and then. I'll be honest, as someone who hasn't played a Sonic game in a while, which, can you blame me, they've all been pretty much bad recently, it's hard to genuinely remember what type of personality Robotnik even had in those games. Robotnik and Sonic pretty much had a Tom and Jerry vibe throughout the entire movie. Plus, Robotnik did have a couple of good roasts in this movie. This helped us, the viewers and fans of Sonic, find a way to enjoy the movie without worrying about whether it really needed a ton of source material or not. To bring back the point I'm trying to make, the way they ended the Sonic movie sets up a sequel that could lead into a potentially interesting cinematic universe. No, it doesn't have to be a long one like the MCU, but what I'm saying is, I wouldn't mind if they went into a direction where it's 4 or 5 movies long. They've already introduced the echidnas in the literal beginning of the movie, which they can use to bring in Knuckles. Small spoiler alert, even though the movie's old by now, they're already bringing in Tails in the sequel. To add to those two things, they've already given Robotnik his traditional look that we've seen in the old Sonic games. Bringing in other classic characters such as Shadow could really lead into something interesting as they grow Sonic into a better hero. Doing multiple Sonic movies that get better on a movie-to-movie basis actually might not hurt. There's more characters and lore they can use to actually make Sonic's universe more interesting. I'm sure there's even more creative decisions they can do, such as figuring out how to bring in Chaos Emeralds and not make them sound like bootleg Infinity Stones. With its 63% regular review score, plus a 93% audience review score on Rotten Tomatoes, for a video game movie, it didn't do badly at all. It also helps that Sonic is currently the highest grossing video game movie of all time, surpassing Detective Pikachu. Speaking of which, let's actually bring Pokemon into this discussion. The beauty of Pokemon games is that none of the games connect heavily. It's nearly the same formulaic thing that we're all used to, and it's pretty much expected on a game-to-game basis. Every single game, we're the protagonist, it's our story, and we go get 8 gym badges. You guys know the rest. There are no real expectations of connections from a game-to-game basis besides small lore drops via dialogue or a statue, etc. Can you guys tell that I'm fed up with the state of Pokemon games right now? Anyways, with Detective Pikachu, they've already built an interesting world and actually managed to bring Pokemon to life. Sure, the Pokemon designs are hit or miss when it comes to a person-to-person basis. However, they've already built this beautiful world that pulls on our heartstrings. It's even amazingly showcased to us in that opening shot in the very beginning of the movie. Staying true to the source material is legitimately important and can make or break movies when it comes to that hardcore video game or comic book audience, so good on Detective Pikachu for that. Detective Pikachu doesn't necessarily need a sequel. It's already told its story, and for what it's worth, I don't think they could find a way to logically bring back that storyline due to the movie's conclusion. Although, they've already shown us that they could bring this world to life, which means they could continue to build up a Pokemon cinematic universe that tells various stories. They don't even need to necessarily connect directly. However, I think they can make subtle nods that at least create a continuity line between the movies. This could actually work and actually be a positive thing for a hypothetical Pokemon movie universe. Video game movies doing Easter eggs the same way actual video games do it would be good enough to create a continuity line, because it would also allow standalone stories to be told that could also be concluded within an entire movie. This could legitimately work, considering the fact that as gamers, we've already shown Nintendo that we're willing to accept the same copy-paste Pokemon game every other year. The potential's legitimately there, If you can't tell by now, I've been trying to not talk about the elephant in the room when it comes to video game movies. Fine, yes, I'll talk about the Uncharted movie. The Uncharted movie is something that I have little to no faith in at all. Normally, I'm genuinely a positive guy that can have fun or make fun of things in a positive way. However, when it comes to the Uncharted movie, I got nothing. On one hand, I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I mean, at this point, who doesn't? On the other hand, PlayStation created a franchise that people such as myself thoroughly enjoy when it comes to Uncharted. Outside of the lovable cast of characters in Uncharted, one of the most entertaining parts in that series are the actual gameplay sequences. On top of this, it doesn't help that the movie is apparently going to be a prequel to the video games. This means we're gonna get a young Nathan Drake played by Tom Holland, while a large portion of the fanbase already associates modern Nathan Drake with Nolan North. It almost feels like this movie isn't necessarily needed to begin with, as you continue to break down the logistics of both this movie and the franchise itself. Plus, there's a lot of drama behind the making of this movie, such as directors leaving and this movie's already been delayed. As one of my friends said, the future of the Uncharted movie franchise is currently uncharted. Another video game movie that I have no faith in is that upcoming Mortal Kombat movie. Hear me out, and I'd love to be educated on this if I'm wrong. When it comes to Mortal Kombat, one of the last things I even think of is the story. It's easily on the bottom of the list of things I think of when it comes to Mortal Kombat for me. For reference, I don't even hate or dislike Mortal Kombat. It's just something that I'd like to assume people also don't care about unless they're hardcore fans that really care about the lore of that game universe. However, for me, it's hard to look at this Mortal Kombat movie and think that this will be a movie that tells a legitimately good story. Notice I said good story. I don't think it's hard to get the Mortal Kombat special effects right, or to fill this movie with action-packed hype sequences to keep us engaged with the movie. It just doesn't help that there are multiple previous Mortal Kombat movies that were absolutely awful, which brings down my current interest in this newer movie much lower. It's good that I took my time with this video because we finally have news about the Last of Us series. The Last of Us HBO Max series has officially been greenlit. Originally, we didn't know much about it. From what we know now, this is basically going to be a retelling of The Last of Us' story. I want to point out, I absolutely love The Last of Us as a franchise. I loved The Last of Us 1, but I didn't absolutely love The Last of Us 2 for a few reasons that I won't get into, don't worry. However, it's clear that there is potential for this to be good, but when you step back and look at it from a logical perspective, I genuinely don't feel like we really need this. Like I've said, yes, I love this series, but I don't know if we absolutely need this to be done. The Last of Us' story is absolutely a story that could be done in a visual form, which yes, I would agree with those who think that this is better off as a series than a movie. Although, if this is going to be a 2-season HBO Max series, what happens if brand new fans that have never played the 2 games end up wanting more of this series and it gets greenlit for a 3rd season? Naughty Dog would technically be venturing out of a comfort zone that could change the realm of The Last of Us for better or worse, and change the way video game stories are told from the future and on. Granted, I understand that both of these games are loved, more so the first one than the second one. The point of what I'm trying to say is that it's hard to not be concerned about a future season after the retelling of the stories are done. If this goes past the point of the retelling of these stories and they begin to step into new territory, this can be a huge win scenario assuming it's successful. On the other hand, it could backfire and potentially do poorly story-wise, creating a worse scenario too. Personally, I have no expectations for this outside of what we know, and I genuinely want it to be good. Like I said, this could absolutely change the way video game stories are told in between the wait of a major title and its sequel. With all that being said, it's still good news that this is happening because this could be another huge win for the game industry. This also could potentially create more willingness from Sony to do more with their current IPs, such as Death Stranding, which could be a good movie in my opinion. If you're curious, of course I'm excited, and I'll absolutely be watching it whenever the hell it comes out. Hell, I'll be reviewing it too. In the beginning of this video, I stated that I believe there's a chance for video games to be turned into quality films. Even despite the fact that we had to acknowledge how bad old video game movies were, I still believe this. I might not be overly excited for the new Mortal Kombat movie or the new Uncharted movie, but what I am excited about is the fact that these IPs are taking the chances to branch into this field of entertainment. These video games and more deserve to be told on such a huge scale like this. Even if The Last of Us series on HBO Max is only a retelling of the story, at least it's happening. This could lead into opportunities for other video games such as animated films for God of War or Horizon Zero Dawn, maybe even something like The Legend of Zelda, and more. Seeing video games succeed outside of the video game media format is always going to be a positive thing because it brings in new potential positive opportunities. Sonic the Hedgehog and Detective Pikachu could be anomalies, or they could be the start of something new for the video game industry right before our very eyes. As long as we don't see video games trying to become the next MCU or DCEU, I'll be happy because the MCU has created a standard for cinematic universes that may never be reached again. Anyways, that just does it for this video. As always, I'm your host, Justin, otherwise known as IDontBeatGames, and I'm here to bring that nerd culture content right to your monitors. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you really enjoyed this video, hit that sub button. If you really feel like debating or discussing various points you might have regarding what you feel about this, hit that comment section. Don't forget to keep it real with peace, love, and positivity.